All right, gather around, my apprentices, as we discuss magic. This is Hyperborean Radio. I'm Celtic God. We have the Lore Keeper with us, as always. And if you appreciate what it is that we do, please consider tossing us a few bucks. There's Patreon. We have
a Teespring. There's a
buy us a
coffee, things like that.
There's something else. Oh, yeah, you can even send us money on PayPal.
Perfect.
At Hyperborean Radio
at gmail.com.
gmail.com. Yes, what he said. What he said, only flawless. Pretend all of that was flawless and smooth and good.
All the goodness.
Right. So
it's
yeah,
the gooderest.
We're going to get magical today. Part of it is because the Lore Keeper had an epiphany. I've been talking about this. Well, we've been discussing it for a while, but he finally got what I was talking about. He had that light switch moment, and he was like, an epiphany. So that's why we're doing this.
Well, and oddly, the thing that actually made me realize it was I was just trying to watch something I knew was bad, and then I had a weird realization that it was that I wasn't enjoying it, but I didn't hate it either, and I knew this was an absolute train wreck.
That it was an objectively bad show.
And I realized that these different things I had been watching over the last few months, the quality kept dropping to the point where something that a few years ago would have been unwatchable is content now.
Well, and part of it too was because you haven't been actively watching things for a while. You just letting it play in the background, and it's that subconscious.
Yes,
the magic worms its way in.
Yes, and that's the thing is words. It's repeated many, many times. People say it all the time without realizing quite what they're saying. Words are magic. And that isn't the abracadabra alakazam, just words in general.
Oh, that's why I forgot. I was going to do a bippity-boppity-boo thing with the introduction.
Bippity-boppity.
Everybody just play it back in your head and add a bippity-boppity-boo to the intro, please.
Anyway, but there are spells cast all the time. You see them on billboards. You see them when you talk to people. You see them on announcements. You hear it on the radio.
Our telegram is magical.
Oh, yeah. Social media is a constant magic spell. And it's going to sound ridiculous.
And it's not what people want it to be, because everybody wants it to be
fireballs and turning people into sheep and all this other stuff. Well, here's the thing. There is a spell to turn people into sheep. Wake up, sheeple. There's sheep everywhere. The thing that really made me realize this was not just, I started noticing it when I noticed that my ability to notice quality and actually be objective with storytelling, something I actually really care about, had dropped so low. And then I also realized when I was watching other things that I could actually feel it like it was worming into my brain. Mm-hmm. Like something was trying to get in there. Yeah.
So even just playing something in the back, magic is dangerous. That's just the way that it is. But so much in life is magical that most of us don't notice it. Even just playing something in the background without actively listening to it is probably actually the most dangerous way.
Oh, yeah.
To consume these
passive
things.
Consumption. Well, here's part of the reason why, actually, is we've gone over this before, is like the quote-unquote magic of Easter eggs is more powerful when you're just doing it because isn't that neat versus this is a fertility totem to the goddess Ostara.
Well, it's like that thing that you were saying. You actually equated it to sports, and athletes do this. They specifically train for this. But to the uninitiated, it would seem that when you tense up, you're going to be stronger. Tense up, you'll be stronger. But any athletes out there knows, no. Actually, you get slower and weaker when you tense up. So they specifically train to relax and be loose and just do it.
And it also helps avoid injury as well in sports. And that's the thing is words, magic, all these things, they're like rivers. And like we've talked about this before, all people technically have magic, but some people have a little stream and other people have raging Mississippis. Mm-hmm. And yeah, people can tell when there's magic being cast because they can actually feel it, whether it's a concert where everybody is just completely full of energy or a speech that rouses an entire nation. There is magic cast all the time. Buy Caliente brand nachos. They're the bestest nachos ever.
Right. Listen to Hyperborean Radio, your favorite ethnic faith podcast. I fucked up the spell, but you get the idea.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is we admit that we are casting. Everyone on social media is casting magic. We're aware of it, and we're also not aware of it.
Well, and one of the most powerful magic spells ever, because we was talking about this earlier today when we was out for a walk and talking pre-show, is no. Now, it's not the word itself. It's the magic of command. So when you command, no. Much more powerful than no. You hear the difference? One is begging and pleading. The other one is commanding.
Well, and that's the thing is...
I don't do begging and pleading very well, but I did my best, damn it.
Well, every spell, quote unquote, is it's multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah. Same spell, many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Or to put it in a way that I think Bill Burr did this was no. Not no.
No means no. No.
No, stop. You're so bad. That doesn't mean no.
Correct.
That means do it faster. Do it harder.
Do it more.
That is going to be a weird clip. But but that's the thing is all of these people, we are in a giant magical war. Mm-hmm. It sounds absolutely insane, but it is. And this is actually why, like, if you
I mean, people want the esoteric and the magic and the woo-woo stuff. And, well, Hyperborean radio is extremely pragmatic. Really? Really?
We
okay, fine. Fuck it. We'll whip out the woo-woo, and we're going to just smother you guys in the woo-woo.
Well, it's like we were talking about this as well, is media. Because
I think
story...
Like 5 to 10% of the listeners just dropped off when I said that we was going to smother them in the woo-woo.
But stories are giant spells. They are massive spells.
Well, and there's different types of magic, too. Like, we've been focusing on the word magic.
But there's also image magic.
Yeah, there's image magic. There's magic involved in actions. There's literally magic in everything once you learn how to see it. Some people are better at it than others.
Well, history films, history textbooks, things like that, they're reality warping magic.
Yes.
Because we don't live in it, because it is technically an imagined state, history is constantly shifting. What happened is not necessarily what happened.
Well, and let me see. We're give or take 8 minutes in. And currently right now, usually a few people dropped off. So for those of you that's still with us, no, we're not saying the occult and the Wiccan crap and, the hiya humba.
All that stuff
no.
all that stuff robs it of power.
Exactly.
Here's the thing.
That is not magic. That's theater. And it's not even good theater. That's not what we're talking about, because that type of magic for Hyperboreans, like, it might work perfectly well for Dravidians, might work perfectly well for Middle Easterners or non-Hyperboreans. But Hyperboreans, we don't do magic that way. It doesn't work for us. And I have proof. Do you know what proof I'm talking about, Lore Keeper?
The lore?
The lore. We've dug deep and far through history beyond the Middle Ages, where the church was in control of everything that was written, but more into the lore and the unspoken history. How much magic do you read about in stories of the gods and heroes? Quite a bit, right?
Yes, but none of it is abracadabra, alakazam, or beating a drum or anything like that. And it's the
With
same.
the exception of the Finns, but they're fucking weird.
Yeah, and that's late stage. We don't know how old it is. And
it was written specifically in, I can't say the name of the book, the Kalevala.
Actually, no. It's written in history books.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The Kalevala.
I know that there's something about like harps
Wainamoinen, Wainamoinen and all the various gods and heroes. How they cast magic is just songs and words. And here's the thing.
Because I know that there's a bunch of it where, and he plucked on his harp and the trees shattered. I don't know where that comes from. I've never actually seen it.
Oh, the cantele. It's an instrument that Wainamoinen invents, but Wainamoinen doesn't need it.
Now, where are those stories? That's what I'm getting at.
That's in the Kalevala. There's no drum.
That's what I was talking about. And see, you did the thing like most moderns do. that I complain about. You focused on the one word thing. It's like the fact checkers. Oh, no, it's not true because he said the word drum, eliminating the rest of it. It'd be like, oh, this is how proper Hyperboreans do it. Yeah, it's the Kali Vala. No drums in it, though, because the essence of what I said was still in the Kali Vala.
Well, and yes, but they do mostly do it like we're actually describing. Mm-hmm. Most instances of magic is either just spoken or song.
Right. Now, cutting down trees and growing forests and whatnot, well, that's this is gods, for instance. They do what we do, just more.
Well, the gods are like us.
Yes. Well,
more.
They are us.
They are us. They're just more.
Right. So if you go out and you sing to you plant a tree, a young tree, and you go out and you sing to it every day, or a forest, and you sing to the forest every day, and the forest grows up big and strong, 1,000 generations from now, you sang that forest into existence if they tell that part of the story. Now, does this mean that you can't go out there and go, oh, and a tree come busting up out of the ground? Well, no. Maybe if you have strong enough magic of that type, sure, but it's not going to require cauldrons. It's not going to require waving feathers around and beating on drums. No, it probably doesn't even require the sound that you're making.
Well, I mean,
it's magic is one of those things. We just do it.
Well, it's like people don't. A lot of the tropes of witches and wizards, they are based on stuff in the lore, but they're definite twistings. It's like, why do witches have cauldrons? Because it's a cooking pot, and they usually live out in the woods, so they make a huge thing of soup. Or maybe they use it to make poultices. It's not eye of newt and skin of dog, and I will turn your prince into a frog.
The hair of wart and dart of thong. I don't know. But yes,
thong.
It's actually a plant. There's a plant called
thong.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah, wrong thong. Get your head out of the gutter.
It's hard because the sex spell is everywhere.
I mean, yeah, we're all under constant magical attack to look at it that way. But no, magic is actually real. But in the lore, when Merlin turns the soldiers to stone, that's a popular or a mildly well-known
the roll
story.
right stones.
Which he just does it.
Well, and here's the thing is, if you look at how the governments and the enemies of our people act, they actually understand that these stories are a little bit more literal than people take them.
Right.
Because they're
or at least they suspect so.
They suspect so. Because they're deliberately trying to destroy the roll right stones, which are supposed to be turned back into men and fight for England and Britain. Avalon.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, like, the ravens in the Tower of London.
They're trying to get rid of them.
Specifically, the Islamic mayor of London is trying to get rid of them. And here's the thing. Those are really old. They go back to, like, a sacred grove.
They know these things are real.
Yes.
And our gods and our heroes, when they do magic, they just do it.
They just
not what about this god and the magic sword? In the old stories, any sword in that god's hands
is magic.
It's not that specific sword. It might be a really good sword that was made by a really good swordsmith,
like Wayland or Vulcan.
Right. But in particular, I'm referring to Freyr, right? Because of his magic sword. However, he is so good with the sword, he can take an antler and fight with it. So is the magic actually in the sword that fights by itself when he is fighting dueling a giant, one of the most powerful ones, with a fucking antler? Now think about it. Is it actually the weapon, or is it the guy using the weapon?
Well, and that's actually another form of magic. Battle or fighting magic. And here's the thing is, like, you used to be a professional fighter.
Mm-hmm. I never made it big. Most fighters don't make it big because they won't bow to the pressure.
Well, same with musicians. Most musicians don't make it big. Just because you were a musician doesn't mean that
you can be the best musician in the world and never make it big. It's usually one of two things. Either because you don't get the lucky break, or because you won't bow to the pressure of the recording companies.
Well,
in my case, I wouldn't bow to the pressure of the promoters.
Yes, but what I was getting at is you effectively, at least from other people's perspective, you think you're just a good fighter. You are. Mm-hmm. But you had battle magic from their perspective because you would appear larger when you were fighting.
Oh, yeah. The guys I fought, They thought there was something weird about me because, you step into the ring, you're just like normal. And then I step into the ring, and all of a sudden you grow 2 feet.
Or teleporting. They think you're teleporting because you're so good at maneuvering. And here's the thing is the difference between magic and skill is very small. So then at what
point are they just the same thing?
Yes. Well, it's like I was talking about cooking. When you cook, there's actually been like stories of this where like food has magical properties or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think it goes to that extreme, but I have noticed like if you cook for someone, even if you can actually transfer your emotions that way. It's like when you're cooking the food, you imbue it with a little bit of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds ridiculous, but think about it. A home-cooked meal from your mom versus a bunch of depressed people at Taco Bell is a very different emotional intake.
Yeah. And most of us are sensitive. Even if we don't know it, we're sensitives.
Well, we're not very good at deciding what we will or will not let into ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said, whenever you get hit by
Here's an example of us being sensitives, because this has happened to most people. You're standing there working, and then you feel somebody staring at you. Or at a store, and you can feel somebody just staring a hole in the back of your head. You can feel somebody behind you, and then you turn around, and 30 yards away, there's somebody looking at you. Why does that happen?
Well, and people call it situational awareness, but again, the situational awareness versus just being able to sense something is
what's the difference?
It's just a fancy way of saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's magic.
Well, it's like you've pointed out before, the way people describe most psychics, like that movie Push.
Mm-hmm.
The psychics in there they're seers and wizards, basically.
Yeah, they just do the things, and it's that movie Push is actually a good way of explaining how our magic works. Of course, it's amped up. It's bigger than what most of us would be capable of. I would not doubt it that some people, some very few people, can do these things to these scales. Like, there might be somebody out there that can train themselves to actually cast a fireball just like in Dungeons and Dragons. But at what cost?
Well, and then how useful
is it? And then why would he do it? Yeah.
Well, because like flaming arrows aren't a thing. The arrow, as it flies, puts the fire out.
Right. Out of a useful bow. Yes.
And that's kind of the thing is that a lot of these things that are cool in fantasy are completely useless in real life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like being able to fly and super strength, except you can't stop a plane or a comet.
The boys. He flies by magic. Well, why didn't you catch the airplane? What am I supposed to catch it on? Air?
Yeah, strength is partially dependent on what you push off with.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, really, Superman, anytime that he is flying, should be relatively harmless. Like, there's no flying into someone at full speed.
Well, like the original Superman, he couldn't fly. He leapt tall buildings, so he could jump really high.
Well,
far.
It's even in his original description.
Right.
Leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Exactly. So, in the original, that's what it was. But he did develop the ability to fly. The only way they could do it would be to change his density. So then he has to become lighter than air to fly the way that he flies, at which point you could kill him with a piece of paper.
Yes. Well, and here's the other thing is superheroes and are a story that's a giant spell. And Superman is actually an interesting case because he was invented based off older figures like Hercules, Paul Bunyan, John Henry, all these
and then they wanted to make him godlike. So then they looked to Oily Josh.
So there's this constant pull between sort of the folk heroes and like God heroes of European and American tradition versus sort of the Moses Christ-like figure.
Mm-hmm.
And what has kept happening is every time he's written, there's a pull in one of these two directions. And for the last 30, 40 years, it's been pulled consistently in this Moses Christ Messiah direction, which is why he's a completely shit character now.
Well, and the thing is we're not trying to destroy the idea of magic by making it mundane. No, actually, we're trying to turn the mundane into magic because that's what it is. How many times I've heard so many people say things like this. Those statues are magical in the Lord of the Rings. I wish that we had things like that in real life.
Well, you can.
Yeah, and we can. and it would be magical. But what makes it magical? Is it because somebody is it because somebody did an incantation over the massive statues that's immaculately carved in the right place, in the right way, in the right proportions? Or is it because the people that was carving it put so much care and detail into it that it became magical?
Well, if you want a giant statue, there's many of them across the planet. There's the Call to the Motherland in Russia. There's Lady Liberty in the United States. There's Mount Rushmore. There's the
Mount Rushmore is getting closer to what I was talking about, because I was talking about something carved directly out of nature, not just a large statue, because there is a difference. There is a difference between those statues that's in Lord of the Rings that's framed by that waterfall versus the Lady Liberty, the Statue of Liberty. There is a difference between those two scenarios, those two setups. Not Stonehenge. You just said it, the one with the presidential faces on.
Oh, Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore is far closer to what I was talking about. But those statues are not impossible, and we could actually have them in real life. But what would make it magic? Would it be because you have a bunch of people wearing robes, waving feathers around? Maybe let's have a boiling cauldron with throwing some salamanders in there and some chalk circles, chanting incantations. Is that the only way that would be magic? Or would it become magical because of the care and the detail that's put into the sculptures, where they are, the careful choice and placement? Which one would actually make it magical?
Well, and the thing is as much as this world is currently in this constant magical war, for lack of a better term, there is very little positive magic.
Which is what we have consistently tried to encourage, is positive magic. Positive for us. It probably sucks for everyone else, but for Hyperboreans, it's fantastic.
Well, it's like cities. It's almost like there's a giant spell of weariness and sadness over it. There's not a positive one. And actually, this is something I actually am trying to warn people. It's not just that this is important to understand what magic actually is according to our lore, according to our traditions. It's you are constantly under the onslaught. And even if you just sum this up as psychological attacks or whatever, you don't have to call it magic. We are constantly under attack by it. And
that's the thing. Magic is so strong, you don't have to call it magic.
Yes.
If it's real magic, you don't have to call it magic.
Yes, that's the thing. It's one of the things that we've tried to de-delineate, because the natural and the supernatural has been delineated under Christianity. These two things were not separate for the longest time. Because here's the thing, is if an elf shows up, it is no less natural than the raccoon.
Correct. Well, and for instance, if you want to see a real witch, because there's so many witches out there, I doubt any's listening, because we have pissed off almost everybody on the planet that calls themselves a witch. If you do and you're listening, hey, congratulations, you're tougher than the rest. But a real witch is not a woman that has 42 cats in the cauldron and the what the hell is that stupid hat called that never actually existed?
Witch's hat.
The conical hat. No, it's the lady. Is she from Poland? The one that made friends?
Oh, I forget her name, but yeah, she was a Polish zoologist, I think. But yeah, she lived in a cabin. She had like a pet boar. She had a pet raven.
These were all wild animals.
Oh yeah, they weren't like
she didn't go out there with them. They came to her.
Oh yeah, she had lynxes that would sleep in her bed. She would walk around with a herd of deer that would follow her everywhere. It was
the giant boar. And again, the thing is, the reason why I say she was a real witch, she didn't tame these animals. She didn't bring the animals there and raise them. No, the animals came to her. She also knew how to heal them. She at least basic herbalist
could basically
skills.
Communicate with them. She was a forest witch.
Right. She was a forest witch. That's a real witch. These people with the chakra wands, chakra crystal wands, and all these salt crystals in their garden, and the conical hats, and the special jars of special dirt that they bought from the special land, very specially far away, and it's very specially expensive. These aren't witches.
They're
pretenders.
They're pretentious pretenders who basically are
plastic pagans.
Plastic pagans. We did a whole freaking podcast on it.
Apparently, one of our
more popular ones.
Yeah, more popular ones. I was going to say more favorite, but I don't. That implies us, and we don't really have favorite podcasts in that way.
No. Well, and this is the other thing is I want to bring up is everyone's noticed that they're kind of taking all of the most beloved franchises and running them into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in
they're
the same
casting
show.
spells.
Yes. Well, it's like American Gods. That show, for as bad as it was casting a spell, and people didn't even realize it. And then they actually basically sicked a counterspell. As the seasons went on, they were trying to undo the accidental spell they cast in the first one. Same with Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
They cast a counterspell in the last few seasons.
Same thing in the show Vikings. They realized that they awoken something. Is it awoken or awakened? But they awakened something in the people, and they're like, "Oh shit, we got to kill this quick."
So then they cast a counterspell, and that's what they're doing with like the Hobbit trilogy and the upcoming Rings of Power. They are trying to cast a counterspell on the original Lord of the Rings book series and the films.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with anything that gives our people inspiration, hope, purpose, a sense of heroism. They are trying to destroy it, and the easiest way to do that is to cast a counterspell.
Right.
And it has to be of equal power. That's part of the problem that a lot of people have. Like, people will bring up these old symbols that were used and talk about how powerful they are. But what they don't realize is there's been decades of people basically cursing them, more or less. I mean, we even say it, I curse you. We still do it to this day.
Yeah, curse upon your name, I spit on you. There's all kinds of...
A pox on both your houses.
Yeah.
The curse... These things are so full of curses and constantly being ambushed with them that no matter what you do, these symbols are not going to be decursed. In fact, by constantly pushing them around, you're actually spreading
Basically,
the
the
curse.
only way that they can be decursed is for them to become forgotten.
Forgotten and then reborn.
Yeah.
But there's a fairly famous one, the Hakenkreuz.
Well, like, actually, if the dream comes true, where we manage to buy some land and get some people all together of like mind, and we all start working the land together. There's various spells that we want to cast. Like, there was a name that one of us had put to it, and it's gone because I'm on air, of course. But it's where the dead and the missing gods. And I wanted to have little idols made and scatter them around
forest
the
of
forest
the dead, or the forest of forgotten gods.
Yes.
And actually have these little idols, generic enough, but handmade, and place them all throughout
preferably
the
made
forest.
by people that has never carved before.
And each one representing, because here's the thing, is once you've truly forgotten the gods, it's not that they can't potentially be reborn, but
they won't be reborn the same way.
They won't be them. It's like when we're reborn, we're not the same person we were in a former life.
Right.
And this is kind of the issue that we're facing, is there is this gigantic spell constantly being cast on our people. And people have said it before, but I think part of the issue is we're trying to fight it with offensive, but it's to quote Gandalf, actually, paraphrase him at least, it's not the grand gestures, it's the little lights, the small acts of kindness that keep the darkness at bay.
Yes.
If you want to try and actually save or help our people, it's not some grand gesture. It's not a attack. It's those little things that keep the hope alive, that keep the meaning alive, the telling of stories. And
it's not that the big acts don't do anything, because obviously they do. But you'll never get that big thing without the thousand little things.
Well, it's like I said, if something's constantly cursed, the thing that saves it is not one giant something that attacks the many curses. It's the bunch of small, for lack of a better term, blessings or enchantments or boons.
Well, it's like I've talked about this before, just on the verse side of it, with this or that is wrong with society and so on and so forth. It's never a singular thing. It's pebbles forming a mountain. These can be negative or positive, and we need to build the counter mountain. So the counter spell to all of these negatives that's in society. And it doesn't mean not using anything, because like electricity, for instance, it is not inherently good or bad.
Well, most things, I mean, there's even a word for it. We unintentionally name things accurately. The titans of industry. That's the thing, is the old Titans, the Titans that are in Greek mythology or the giants or things like that, these aren't evil. They're just forces of nature. We have created some industries and mechanics
that we become beholden to, because that's where I was going to go with it, with electricity. There's no problem with electricity. Where the problem comes in is being beholden and reliant on electricity.
Yes.
I don't know, the robotic, because we're almost there, the robotic Star Wars arm and legs and stuff like that. These things, they're perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. And if you lost your arm in a horrible accident, I'm sure it'd be great to have the Star Wars arm. And I wouldn't try to stop you from having the Star Wars arm. But we can't be reliant on it. And then what is the cost of this? Because currently right now, with these ones that's borderline the Star Wars arm, yeah, they are. Would it be worth it to have that arm if you are tracked everywhere that you go? And you have to make payments on, you can't just buy it outright, but now you have to make a $300 payment for the rest of your life to have access to this arm. Well, now at this point, it's a bad thing.
Well, there's even entire stories around the consequences of such a thing happening, like Repo Man and Repo the Genetic Opera.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing, is there's all these stories, and these stories are being told of this dystopia of all these things, and they're reinforcing these things. They were supposed to act as warnings, but what they're turning into is we craft reality partially by how we see it. So if we see everything as bad, things will not get better. This doesn't mean we can't recognize the horrible things or the bad things or the negative things. But we also have to let the good things have their say.
Right.
They have to have a refuge. They have to have a place they can grow again. It's like a fort.
If you focus, it's positive and negative. It is a type of magic. If you focus on the negative all the time, and do not live in fear, do not live in fear, or whatever, insert wise man voice, whether it's Yoda or Guru. But yeah, it's true. If you live in fear, if you live in that negative headspace all the time, everything becomes negative.
Well, and here's the other thing is we've actually noticed we're kind of weaning ourselves off of media, but there's actually something we started to notice, and it's been going on for decades, possibly since the beginning of film. There's a spell being cast over and over again. Let the past die.
Oh, yeah.
Kill it if you must. And it's not just because there's really famous instances of this in like some recent Marvel movies and the Star Wars films, but it's being cast more and more.
Yeah, it's in actually a lot of films. It was actually a YouTube guy that talks about film and whatnot. And he brought that up, and he used it as a joke. And I'm like, oh, hey, wait, that's important. And then started actually looking, and those lines or variations on those lines are in so many movies. You can't live in the past, let the past die. Sometimes the past must be killed. The past must die even if you have to kill it. There's 1,000 different ways that they're saying it, but it is in so many films.
Well, and the spell has been cast. It's everywhere.
Yeah,
you can actually
been cast
see it
1,000 times.
Well, like the last 20 years, we have been out of time. And by out of time, I mean removed from it. Because think about it. The last 20 years have not had a discernible culture. Mm-hmm. It's like a mishmash. Like all the time of the last 100, 200 years is happening all at once. They are destroying it. And what's happening as a result is the past is constantly changing. It's like
I know what it is. It's the CERN magic wheel of time thing that they got going.
No.
Oh, no? Oh,
no.
Damn it.
Well, no, I mean, like, for instance, in people will bring up 1984 a lot. Mm-hmm. I've actually read that book.
I have not.
There is actually a scene where earlier on in the book, they're because there's basically 3 supernations in the 1984 world. They are fighting one, and they've always been fighting the other. And then partway through the book, all of a sudden we're fighting this one, and we've always been allies with this other one. So they switched it. Mm-hmm. So there's this constant thing, but because there's so few nations, none of it really matters. It's just a way of keeping people under control.
And then they tell people it's always been this way.
Well, and it's part of why newspeak is so dangerous. It's why we do the vocab lessons on the Telegram. To make people weaker, take away their spells, take away language.
Or, conflating it, twisting the meanings. Well, You see, that's not how I use that word. Yes, that is exact. I've had people say this to me, and that is how they was using that word. What they're trying to do is get me to excuse their behavior, but no, they was actually using that word that way, and they're trying to convince you that's not what that word means, so that you too will use that word in that way, thinking that means something else.
They're casting spells and getting you to cast them too without even realizing
it. And it's not that everybody's doing it on purpose, because many of us have been taught by our priests of one type or another, whether it's a school teacher, an actual priest, a YouTube or podcast personality, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter. A lot of us have been taught to use these words, and we're using them correctly, but we think that they mean something that they don't.
Well, and we even said this earlier. Passive. Mm-hmm. The more passive and unintentional, the more the flow happens, because with the intention, you're forcing yourself rigid because most people don't have practice.
Right.
But when you do it unintentionally, it's like when you can throw the baseball farther when you're not even thinking about it than when you actually try to wind up your arm.
Exactly. It's like when we're throwing the ball back and forth, because you're not really that much of a sports ball guy and been training to do it offhand. When you actually try, and same way with me, I try to do it offhanded, it doesn't fly as well. It doesn't go as far. The football doesn't have the same spin on it, the same spiral. But even offhanded, not paying attention, boop, and it goes far, goes hard, and it spins perfectly because we aren't actively trying. So when people do these things, they're not necessarily being malicious, but they are doing a malicious act.
Well, it's part of the point of practice. When you're playing an instrument, for instance, or you're playing a sport, or you're doing anything really, you do it almost automatically.
Yeah.
You are doing it passively. You are doing
what's the one thing like a music teacher will tell people? Relax, 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 relax. You got to relax your fingers. If it's a horn, you have to relax. Tense your lips, but relax them. What?
And
you have to be strong, but relax.
So you
with
have
the piano.
You have to practice, but the whole point of practicing is so that you do it unintentionally.
Right.
All of these complex rituals and things, they're actually robbing people of power in anything they do.
Well, I think that's why the church actually pushed this, what people are thinking of as magic, so that they will pursue the useless magic rather than the actual powerful magic and stay away from actually accomplishing things.
Well, it's like in a church, they cast magic all the time.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like I went to my grandmother's funeral. It was the first time I'd been in a church in years. You can actually feel it's like something's trying to grip you when people sing the songs. And or if
you're me, it feels like somebody's inserting a straw and
that's what it feels like. Something's
trying to
suck your soul out. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Not even weird. It's strange.
Yes.
Because that's the other thing is weird is a word that's been corrupted, and I'm trying to stop using it the wrong way.
Or you're still using it correctly, but to things that aren't beneficial.
Or the Eucharist, the eating and drinking the body and blood of Christ. Right. That is a ritual that has power. Singing together has power. It puts, because they've actually done studies on this, when people sing together in unison, their hearts start to beat in accordance, and it actually causes an intense bonding situation.
Yes.
This is partly why I don't disagree when people say, well, I did this with people and it meant a lot, even if the ritual is complete nonsense.
It did.
What it was is all of you were in
sync.
In sync. You were connected.
You took a non-magical thing and made it magic.
Well, and that's the thing is, it's not the thing you're doing, it's the way you're doing it.
Well, and here's another one. I believe you was talking about it with William, maybe with Aethelwolf the other day. But it was that he's an author and he had a vision of Balder and then became devoutly Christian.
Oh, that was C.S. Lewis. So he was reading this old poem. I forget who wrote it and what it was about, but it was a long poem. And it had the line, Balder the Beautiful is dead. And he had this he described it as an ecstatic experience where all of a sudden he had a vision of these rolling, beautiful northern hills. So he had this ecstatic experience because of the god Balder, because he connected to it for whatever reason. I'm not going to try and say one way or the other. What happened was he trusted his friend Tolkien, and I like Tolkien, but Tolkien was a Christian, a very devout one as far as we can tell. And he took that same magic and then the bond he had with C.S. Lewis, and he actually ended up making C.S. Lewis even more devoutly Christian than he was. He took a pagan ecstatic experience and made it a Christian experience by reframing it. Balder, instead of becoming a god of the north, became the northern Christ.
Yeah, according to C.S. Lewis. So he had a magical experience, and then it got twisted and warped. And it works in both directions. Like, well, it's like a double-edged sword. It cuts in both directions. You know what? So does a single-edged sword.
Yes, people forget that. It's like the hammer doesn't have to hit you with the hammer end to hurt. The wooden handle bit hurts too.
Yes.
Well, and this is actually a method that the church has used extensively.
As you can pretty much attest to, because showing you how to axe fight a little bit, and I flipped the axe around, and I showed you how it's actually done.
Yeah.
Didn't even strike you with the handle, but you knew that would hurt had I hit you with the handle. You don't have to hit him with the sharp bit.
Well, it's actually, this is another spell people have cast. Europeans and people like us don't have any martial arts. Like, people actually talk about...
Yeah.
No,
which is a lie.
No, two of the most famous ones are wrestling and boxing. It's just because it doesn't have Kung Fu Do, Karate.
Right.
It doesn't have a fun name. Well, I mean, even Baritsu, I think is what it's called. It's Irish stick fighting. They just gave it an Asian name and mixed in a little Brazilian
Which is
jiu-jitsu.
actually documented that they took Irish stick fighting, which didn't really have a name, but because they wanted people to take it seriously as a martial art, they based it out. Well, they gave it an Asian name, and I forget exactly which Itsu.
I think they.
I want to say is. Actually, I don't know. I'm not even going to guess. But there's another martial arts that has a Itsu, and they're like, oh hey, there's this, so we'll call it Baritsu, and it's documented. And then people took it seriously. But before that, oh no, that's Irish stick fighting. That's for animals and uncouth.
Well, I mean, it's like the Chinese. They keep making movies of that one guy who fought a American boxer or an English boxer. I forget who. But they always portray him as he won. He lost.
Yeah, he got his ass kicked.
Or catch wrestling.
And there was no cheating because they show the two types. And he wins in both ways in the Chinese movies. There's the one where he cheats like crazy, and then there's the other one where he's actually an honorable fighter, and he still loses. And then he congratulates Ip Man for winning. But what really happened was Ip Man got his ass kicked, and the guy didn't cheat. It's just he couldn't do anything with that catch fighter. Catch fighting back then was not like, I forget what it's called now, WWE, WEF, whatever the fuck it is. The professional wrestling. No, it was a combination of boxing and wrestling.
Yeah, catch wrestling or catch fighting is an extremely...
Catch as one can is what it means.
And it's actually a very...
There's no rules. Just try not to kill or maim each other permanently.
Yes. Well, I mean,
that's the rule.
The Asians know that it's dangerous. Over here, it's basically testosterone ballet.
Yeah.
Which is another spell they cast.
Mm-hmm.
All of these...
you can't get big
professions.
What about this? Well, you can't get big and strong unless you take steroids. No. This is not true. Well, all these professional athletes, they take, I think it's called PEDs. Well, yes, they do. But do you have to do that? No.
All it does is make you recover faster.
That's what they do it for. Is for
it's
recovery.
Not muscle growth hormone. That's well, it kind of is, but it isn't. But the thing with a lot of these things is, like, in the Navy.
Yeah,
come
that's
and
where
join
I was going to go with
man.
it. Is the Navy. The Navy is so gay. The Navy used to be hyper masculine.
Oh yeah, just look at old pictures from like 100 or so years ago.
Well, and now they're pushing. The pirates had gay weddings because when you spend so many years aboard a ship with other men, of course you're going to develop romantic relationships.
This is why they had whores on board.
Yeah, most of them had whores on board, and some of them. Here's the thing. Not all of these, I forget what they is called. But for a lack of a better term, we'll use that gay marriage. They used a different term. But they weren't all gay couples. Sometimes it was just it might be a father-son type relationship, like I'm old, you're young. If I die, you get my stuff. It's basically, they're bonded that way. It wasn't always a sexual thing. It pisses me off so fucking much with modernity. You take two people that spend any amount of time together, they must be gay.
Well, it's
they mustn't always be fucking.
Well, it's like Achilles and Patroclus. People have just rewritten that they're gay. There's even a book about them being gay. He just really cared about his cousin. Is that so hard to believe?
In today's world, it is, and it is an absolute atrocity.
Well, it's why there's that saying, a lie repeated enough times becomes the truth.
Yes.
Well, and that's why they're going after people that are already dead. They can't defend themselves. Because if you go after George Washington by saying that he took out the teeth of his slaves and used them for his dentures, or you go after, I don't know, Teddy Roosevelt, or you go after Heracles, you go after Achilles, after Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman was a freaking abolitionist, and they are trying to argue he was a hyper racist just because he was an old white guy.
Yeah.
Or retroactively making a lot of people gay.
Oh, that seems to be their favorite one. And then it's gotten to the point where 2 guys and 2 girls cannot be friends without fucking each other, and a guy and a girl can't be friends without fucking each other. It's like, no, this is not necessarily how it works.
It's the destruction of language, like love. Love there used to be so many different kinds of love. The Greeks had like 7 or 8 words, and so did the North. But I honestly don't know enough about that to really do that. But like friendship, like Facebook,
there's different types of friendship.
Well, and Facebook destroyed the word friends. It cast curse after curse, and now the word has no meaning.
Yeah. So. Or brother. All these various religions destroyed the word brother.
Yes.
So if you're not actually the person's brother, don't call me your brother, because I've had too many people betray me that call me brother. However, and same way with friend. However, amongst our own circles, we can call each other cousins. And this is the thing. You don't trust a cousin nearly as much as you do a friend or a sibling, or at least you shouldn't. But there's the potential for that bond to build. Plus, it shows a relation, I guess. A relation. I'll use that word. A relation between the two. So we're admitting, it's like saying, hello, fellow Hyperborean, of which I would like to get to know better. Hello, cousin.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's even in some of our lingo, cuz.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to take that one and shove that off to the side, because don't use cuz,
don't use bro.
Yeah, actually use the formal. If you're going to say this to me, you can call me cousin, because we're probably like 400 times removed cousins, but we're cousins.
Well, and here's the thing is, as long as you talk about something, you are giving it power. It's not saying don't talk about things that are bad, but like the rings of power, the best way to kill it, to not let the counterspell take.
To push it into the shadows and let it die and ignore it.
Do what they want us to do to their counterspell, what they want to do to our blessings, basically.
Yes. Well, because they don't really care so long as they don't even really care if people are watching it. What they care is, are people talking about it?
Well, yeah, because the counter spell will spread no matter what. That's like the people that click on the Rings of Power just to ratio it, they're getting caught in the counter spell, in the curse, in the enchantment.
They don't give a shit. People watch it and people hate on it. Oh, that's perfect. We'll make another season for them to keep clicking on it, for them to keep absorbing it.
Well, it's why they kill the superheroes. It's why they kill the fantasy genre. It's why they kill sci-fi. They are destroying hope. They are destroying heroes. And it's time we actually started saying the spell that needs said quite a bit. No more.
Or better yet, just no.
Yes.
Just no. And say it with commanding authority. Because I noticed, too, this is one of the things where a lot of people will fall off. We can say some of the most crazy, outlandish shit and people will listen. But most people, which is why we ask, are you tough enough? We have noticed if we place responsibility and authority at their feet, they're like, oh, fuck no, I'm out.
Well, and there are many spells, like the trying to compare us to chimps. There's a specific reason that spell, even though there's no real proof.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually
there's none.
None. There's actually more.
There is proof. They say that there's proof. Yeah, and I say, I don't know, shit falls out of the sky, because it does on occasion.
Oh, yeah. But that is a spell, because what it does is it removes us from the north, and we're just evolved from the Africans, is usually where people end up taking it. All of that is nonsense. It's a completely warped view of the world. We are highly adapted to the north.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's one of the reasons we push from our own folklore. This shows up in the folklore and mythology so much that we are bear people. Is because not only does it make more sense, we've actually looked into it trying to disprove it, and we keep finding more evidence for it.
Yeah, we took the scientific method and tried to disprove it.
But simply put, that mental imagery that we are bear people, it's a spell that helps our people. Whereas the raging, poo-throwing chimp.
And the Tower of Babylon is why we're all different. Which is where it always goes.
Yeah. It's
why would we embrace that fucking story?
Embrace Babylon, embrace Jerusalem, embrace the Tower of Babel and the Noah's flood, embrace the sky, Papa and his golden sun.
Which is what they're subconsciously doing. That's because I know some people get pissed off when I'm like, even science is universalistic and Abrahamic specifically. And they're like, But yeah, everything, well, how do you explain then the out of Africa, we come from monkeys hypothesis thing? They're ignoring some of, well, that's Darwin. Yes, and Darwin also said that all of the different races evolved from different people or from different animals.
Well, that's why after Darwin, that was actually the argument. If you look into the old arguments, is these different races of man evolved from different animals. We didn't know what.
Yeah, and there's like 1,000 different hypotheses, but it was generally accepted that we was all different species. Now it is heresy to utter that aloud.
Well, and the very fact that science has heresy is a problem.
Yes.
Well, and here's the thing is science, much like everything else, it's a force of nature. It's actually just a way of describing the forces of nature. Mm-hmm. And just like every force of nature, it doesn't care. Which is why things like morality, because if not, you end up with like Vault-Tec from Fallout.
Yes.
Complete disregard for human life, morality, care, anything. Horror shows. Why? Well, what if? It just becomes, what if we could do this? What if this happened? I want to know.
Yeah. What happens if we cut off the left foot of every person? Do they develop a different gait? Does it change their hips?
What if we turn all the men into women and all the women into men?
Yeah. That'll be equity, right? Because notice there's, and it's part of the language game, the language magic leads out into the physical world. Words like equality and equity. They used to push equality, then they got equality. Well, equality isn't equal. We need equity.
Yep. Well,
and equity is different from equality, and it's better.
Yeah. It's like if words are magic, right? And images are magic. Books are basically giant spells, bottled spells.
Spell books.
They're spell books. There's each of these, because I actually realized, because I was trying to read this one book because it had some interesting things, but it was written by a liberal, and I could actually feel it worming into my brain. I was getting headaches reading it. So I stopped, and I started feeling better. It sounds ridiculous, but it's a thing. It's why you have to be careful what you read.
What you consume. Whether actively or passively.
What spells you let enter you.
Mm-hmm.
Because
think of it like arsenic, I guess. When it's a bad spell. Think of it as arsenic. Arsenic can actually save your life. But if you consume too much of it, you're going to die. Now, at this point, does it matter if you knowingly and aggressively consume arsenic or whether you passively and unawarely consume arsenic to the lethal dosage? What? It doesn't really fucking matter. You're still consuming the arsenic. And there is a beneficial aspect to arsenic. However, that is so minute. You're probably, in general, further off not even consuming it.
And here, that's the thing, is movies are even more powerful than books.
Mm-hmm.
Which is partly why, like, because...
Well, and music more powerful than that. That's why they add music to movies.
Oh, yeah. Once you add words, music... and imagery, that's why movies are so powerful. Mm-hmm. And because you can have a image from a movie, a scene from a movie stuck in your head forever, and then that spell is constantly working on you.
Well, and that's not to discount music either, because there's all kinds of people. Well, I don't know what the words are, like when you point out how detrimental the words are. I don't know what the words are. I just like the rhythm. I like the beat. I like the way that it sounds. But I don't know what the words are. But you can sing it word for word. So even though you don't consciously know the words, the message of the song still got in your head.
Well, and that's actually, I just realized something. As bad as media has gotten, there are still these scenes, even in terrible movies, that are good. And that's the thing, is the entire
and it's
thing
done on purpose.
The entire thing doesn't have to be a spell. But so long as you have that one scene, like Stranger Things, it's not that good a show.
No, it's a horrible show. It's a train wreck. I tried watching, couldn't even make it through the first episode.
But these small scenes with power, they start being like, oh my gosh, this scene is so amazing. You should watch it. And then you go watch it, and then that scene sticks in your head. They got the spell there, even if you just watch 2 minutes.
And here's the thing. It's not just that 2 minutes that sticks in your head. That 2-minute scene. That was actually phenomenal and actually said something positive. There's 15 minutes on each side of that gets locked in your brain as well.
Yes, it's used as an anchor, like putting a nail through a tent.
Well, and I've done this. I've gone through some of these movies with really powerful scenes, and some of them, probably all of them to various degrees, actually all of them to various degrees, on each side of this very powerful scene, there's complete garbage and trash that's detrimental. I'm pretty sure it's done on purpose because of the way these movies are made. I don't think it's accidental. I think it's done on purpose. Yes, there's my conspiratorial moment of the day.
Well, and they're clearly deliberately destroying all of these things. They're killing the blessings with curses.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that, especially plays, operas, any media that incorporates all of these abilities, the music, the words, the imagery, they are reality warping spells. Mm-hmm. That's why Shakespeare or Wagner's operas, they can have so much power and actually start to warp reality to them. That is what media is doing now. It is warping reality to what it wishes it was. That's why they keep portraying non-whites and not us in our lands long, long ago. Because they are warping our perception of reality. They're killing our ghosts. They're killing our history.
All right. And, it's that time, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to say, if you took nothing else from this, then, I don't know. Put magic into everything that you do. Realize everything that you do and everything that you don't do matters, and it echoes and reverberates throughout reality. Yeah, take that with you. If you made it this far, congratulations, you win. You're a toughie. You're tougher than the toughies. And, I'm hoping right now we're having a great time on our survival experience trip thing. It'll be better than sitting in modernity. So, we'll see you guys when we get back.
Yep, and for those out in the wastelands of modernity, those of you who are listening to Hyperborean radio as we speak a spell, watch out for those trying to curse you, because they're everywhere. And they are coming at you from all sides. Beware the chaos magicians of the wasteland. Lorekeeper out.